decades, Israel and Egypt existed in a state of war seen, like the Middle East itself, as a Gordian knot, irresolvable, unsolvable, an eternal flame fueling global hatred, war, and terrorism. On September 17, 1978, Egypt and Israel signed an accord that led to peace. Our third story tonight, the man who made that possible, will be with us in a minute, returning to the world stage one more time with another plan, a new book, offering again a plan for peace in the Mideast, and a little quiet advice to his fifth successor as well. The Camp David Accords, signed by Egypt's Anwar Sadat, Israel's Menachem Begin, witnessed by U.S. President and the facilitator, Jimmy Carter, who is our guest tonight, established a milestone and a model for the pursuit of peace in the Middle East. But after 8 years of neglect by President Bush, the shattered ceasefire between Hamas and Israel is just one of many crises Mr. Bush left for President Obama. As promised, with us tonight, the 39th President of the United States, former governor of Georgia, Navy veteran, founder of the Carter Center, recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, and author of too many books to list. Most recent of them, We Can Have Peace in the Middle East, a plan that will work. President Carter, great thanks for your time again tonight.
Well, it's good to be with you. Thank you very much.
I want to ask simply, what's the plan? But let me focus that question a little bit. What is the part of the plan that you think is key to its success that others have not previously hit on?
Having a president in the White House that will put it at a top priority among all the many international events he has to confront, and who has started it at the beginning of his administration and has already appointed the finest negotiator or peace envoy that the United States could possibly produce, Senator George Mitchell. So a major United States input from the beginning of a president's term is absolutely necessary.
Did President Obama's victory to any degree preempt that point? I mean, why do we need an argument for American engagement now that we have a president who is committed to the concept of American engagement?
Well, the engagement's already been sadly crying out for American participation. And even when the debacle took place and the tragedy came to Gaza, with 1,300 people killed and about 500 women and children and 22,000 buildings damaged or destroyed, I think even that tragedy has brought forward a lot of interest that didn't exist before. The President of France, the Great Britain's Prime Minister, the leader of the European Union have all now been working with the Egyptians to bring about a peace agreement, a ceasefire in Gaza between Hamas and Israel. And I predict that in the next 2 or 3 days, we'll see a success with that, maybe with a 1 year or an 18-month ceasefire agreement. So I think to get the rest of the world included, but with the United States in the forefront, is what we've very sadly needed in recent years and have not had.
That's one kind of change created by factual changes on the ground in the Middle East. There's another one, obviously. You argue that time is running out to strike a deal here. How does the most recent vote and the changing demographics in Israel play into this?
Well, we don't know yet what kind of government will be formed. I think that it will probably be the more right-wing under Netanyahu, and nobody knows yet. But no matter who is the leader of Israel, the Israeli people want peace, the Palestinian people want peace, the Lebanese and Syrians want peace. None of them have it now. And I think that if a good plan can be put forward, a two-state solution that I describe in my book, then the people of Israel will demand that their leaders accept the proposal. But it has to be involving the United States as a strong participant, which has been lacking for a long time. George H.W. Bush really started on this early in his term, and that resulted in the Oslo Peace Agreement. I started it as soon as I became president, and that resulted in a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt 30 years ago, none of which has been violated since then. So I think the time's come for it. And the Israelis have now realized, too, that they got to have a two-state solution and not a one-state solution, which they've been moving toward the last 20 years by confiscating the property of the Palestinians, leaving no place for a second nation. You can't have a one-nation solution. That would be a catastrophe for Israel.
And of course, President Carter, the entire context of this has changed so much for Americans in the last decade. Why? Tell us why the Palestinian problem per se is so pivotal to addressing extremism in Iraq, in Iran, in the entire Islamic world.
Well, that's done two things that really hurts America. One is it has escalated Iran and Iran's influence and power in that region, which they don't deserve to have, but they've become known, even among many Arabs, they're not Arabs, among many Muslims, that they are the champions of the Palestinians, almost by default. a peace agreement with American participation, meeting the Palestinians' rights, will alleviate that concern. Another one is the withdrawal from Iraq by the United States, which is now going to be going on more expeditiously. I don't think there's any doubt that our invasion of Iraq, which was unwarranted, has greatly escalated Iran's status in the region. Another thing is that Iran has been threatened the last few years, indirectly and sometimes directly by the United States, that if we don't bomb you, we'll encourage Israel to do so. And to remove that threat from Iran will be good. And I think Obama has also promised, as you know, that he's going to negotiate or communicate with the Iranians with careful preparations made and so forth, with mutual respect, so-called. And all four of those factors will lessen the influence of Iran in that region and maybe be a factor in reducing their inclination to go with nuclear power.
You mentioned President Obama and negotiations. This is also a phrase we could apply to domestic politics. He has made such a point here about seeking bipartisanship. We've seen the fruits of this in the last couple of days. If you were president now, which would you pick? A more stimulative economic package with no Republican votes, or a less stimulative bill with some Republican votes?
I would have had to do the same thing that Obama has had to do. He didn't get any votes in the House of Representatives. As you know, Republican representatives are like robots. They have to do what their bosses tell them. They can't put into consideration what's best for the country or best for their own district. If they do, they'll lose their seat on a committee or they'll lose their future benefits for that district, so they have to vote the way they're told. And I think he had to compromise to some degree to get the 3 votes in the Senate that's been so crucial in getting the bill passed, since they don't have a clear enough margin in the Senate. So he's done the best he could. I think some of the amendments made might be beneficial. In general, I would have preferred what they put forward first that had Obama's approval, but he had to accommodate Democrats in the House who had a lot of, things that weren't necessary. And I think this new bill is going to be very good.
Do you have any suggestions at this point? How does this new president address the polarization of the two parties, particularly the Republicans' estrangement from the center course, or even the possibility of negotiation on some things like this?
I think he'll keep on trying and do the best he can. And I think that maybe this stimulus package, the way we've seen it go through the House and Senate, I hope it'll go through the Senate very soon, maybe tonight. I think that shows the pattern that he's got to follow in the future if necessary. It would be a lot better if a substantial number of House members and Senate members who are Republicans would go along with some other proposals. This one's highly contentious. I know it involves a lot of philosophy, political attitudes, but I think in the least he can get by with just 2 or 3 votes in the Senate, maybe 2 votes in the future when we get another vote from Minnesota, and then we got a clear enough majority in the House to prevail if necessary. But we don't always get all the Democratic votes. They're much more independent in their voting than the Republicans are inclined to be.
Finally, sir, and thank you for the generosity of your time this evening, but if you don't mind, a silly mystery that maybe you could clear up for us. There was some speculation last month about the visible space, the gap between yourself and President Clinton at the White House meeting with Mr. Obama and the 2 Presidents Bush. Can you fill in that gap for us, so to speak?
Oh, that's completely ridiculous. Ordinarily men, when they get a photograph, don't stand touching each other. And I stood the way I always have when we get a bunch of presidents together. But a lot of the speculation was generated because when we came out on the platform, we very ardently embraced and shook hands with the Bushes, Bush Sr. and his wife, and we didn't with the Clintons. But we had already been with the Clintons about 15 minutes waiting to go out on the platform. Bill kissed Rosen, I kissed Hillary. We congratulated each other and thanked each other for help. When both of us ran for president, we helped each other. We looked at what Hillary's going to do as Secretary of State, and then we walked out, having been together for 15 minutes, and saw the Bushes for the first time, and that made it look like the Clintons and we weren't speaking to each other. It was completely erroneous.
The number of microscopes on any one president, you can only guess how many there would be when there are 5 in one room.
That's certainly true.
President Jimmy,
we had a great time together.
President Jimmy Carter, I will repeat what I said when I had the good fortune to meet you in Denver over the summer. It is my honor, sir. Thank you.
It's a pleasure for me to be on your program. One of the favorites in my family, by the way.
You honor me again, sir. Take care.